Chapter 8. Create Wings and Routes. Every single piece of content you create should of course live on your website, or on your content library, pages, and other ports of call like a landing page you establish. But that's not the whole story, which brings us to content rule number 10. Create wings and routes for your content. This advice is usually applied to parenting. Give your children routes to keep them grounded and level-headed, and offer them wings to explore new worlds and have new adventures. But it also applies nicely to content. Ground your content solidly in your unique perspective, voice, and point of view, but give it wings to soar freely, and be shared all across the web as a social object. After all, a powerful component of social media and online business is the fact that everyone is a publisher, right? And this includes your readers. Everyone is empowered to share, link to, and comment on every piece of content that sparks his or her interest. This is why we have stressed that each piece of content should be viewed as a social object that also exists beyond the platform it is published on. The engine in great social objects isn't in the mechanism itself, it's the fuel, the content at its heart. Identifying and focusing more effort on high-octane fuel will do more to win friends and influence people than anything else, says Campfire creative director Steve Cowlson. Just produce great content, and it'll speak louder and travel further than you can imagine. To use another analogy, you cannot have the mentality of survivalists, who hoard everything they grow for themselves. Rather, be like Johnny Appleseed, spreading seeds to allow everyone to enjoy the fruits metaphorically. Sow your content seeds to nurture awareness, spread positive sentiment, allow your audience to spread your message for you, and, ultimately, grow your customer base. Wings for the web: findable, accessible, shareable. Findable. When people search on Google or Bing, can they find your content? If you have video content on YouTube or Vimeo, how easy is it for someone looking for the type of video you shared to find it? How can you know? Try it yourself. How quickly can you find your own stuff? There are many search engine optimization (SED) strategies to boost your search rankings. But fundamentally, be sure you provided as much information as possible in the context and description of your content. Include keywords you want to be found for, including long-tail keywords or terms you are trying to own as your own. See Chapter 1. Is your content answering a specific question? Then make sure that question is in your content somewhere. Establish profiles on all the leading social networks. Search for your company or its products on the social web, too, on Twitter, Yelp, Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other networks you or your customers participate in. It's important to establish profiles, even if you only use your presence there as a landing page, for redirecting visitors to sites you are active on. You don't want to be invisible or, worse, have someone else claim your name or your company's name. Accessible every day, people are interacting with content on a variety of screens, so it is critical that you make sure that what you are creating is available to as many different platforms as possible. Just a few years ago most of us didn't have to worry about our sites being viewable on phones. Now it is critical for all of us to ensure that they are. If you are now wondering whether your site is available to mobile phones, ask a handful of friends with different devices to surf your website. The results may surprise you. We are also in the midst of a bit of a battle in the browsing wars, with Apple declaring that it will not support Adobe Flash on its devices. This means that if your video files or entire site are built in Flash, they will not be viewable on the popular Apple iPad or iPhone. You could thus be missing out on new customers. Always test your content on as many browsers, phones, and devices as time and resources allow. Accessible also refers to making a deliberate decision whether to gate your content behind a registration page, and if you do, what information to collect. For advice on whether to require registration in return for access to your content, see Chapter 13. Shareable: why do you email articles to friends? Or like a post on Facebook? Or share things on your own networks? In a study of the most emailed New York Times articles, researchers at the University of Pennsylvania found that readers wanted to share articles that inspired awe. What's more, stories that triggered an emotional response were more likely to be emailed, and positive articles were shared more often than negative ones, the researchers found. Moreover, longer articles generally did, according to the Penn researchers, although they theorized that it was just because the longer articles were about more engaging topics. So-called surprising articles, like one about free-range chickens on the streets of New York, were also more likely to be emailed. But articles that evoked a response that went beyond surprise to awe, or what the Penn researchers defined as an emotion of self-transcendence, a feeling of admiration and elevation in the face of something greater than the self, were among the most shared. An opening and broadening of the mind is how one of the researchers described the effect of such articles. What does that research finding mean for you, the content creator? It means you should definitely create content that adheres to the content rules, paying special attention to number 8, do something unexpected. It also means you should both subtly and actively encourage your audience to share. Make sharing across all social networks as effortless and easy as possible. Encourage your audience to buzz your content via Google, retweet it on Twitter, or like it on Facebook. Feature the major buttons prominently on each piece of content you create. Consider using a centralized service like ShareThis.com, which allows you to place just one button that expands to offer buttons for various sharing services for users to click on. The good thing about using a service like ShareThis is that as new social networks evolve, the company will add the new platforms to the mix, so you don't have to. Also, when you upload video, audio, or photography content to other services, ensure that your settings allow the sharing of that content. Creative Commons licensing allows you to clearly set the terms for what others can and cannot do with your content, in addition to sharing it. Will you allow others to use your photos for corporate brochures with attribution, for example? Making content shareable also includes making it easy for others to embed some of your content in their own sites or blogs. Business blogger and Trust Agents co-author Chris Brogan calls this giving your content hand jazz. An example might be a widget, tool, game, slides, hair presentation, or almost anything that can be manipulated or interacted with. An interactive quiz widget that your customers can embed directly onto their blogs to share on your behalf is a good example. One from ExactTarget is shown in Figure 8.1. Figure 8.1 Make your content shareable. Page 128. And finally, consider publishing any research or charts you produce in both PDF and PowerPoint format. Doing so allows your audience to use your charts in their own presentations with your company name or logo intact, of course making it another case of your audience spreading your message for you. Fishing for attention in the activity streams. An activity stream refers to interactions happening including content sharing across various social media platforms. You can see it in real time by visiting the home page of Twitter, for example. Notice how quickly the stream refreshes there. Activity streams aren't monitored constantly, people pop in and out of them throughout the day. Which means that something you shared has likely disappeared soon thereafter. Activity streams are exponential, however, and by that we mean something noticed by one person has the potential to be shared many times over exponentially. So what are some practices for publishing and sharing in social activity streams? Engagement is the goal. Engaging with people on social networks is key. Because when someone retweets you on Twitter or comments on a status update on Facebook, it shows up in that person's activity stream. So the more people who engage with your content, the more times that content is disseminated to each of their community of friends and fans. More engagement means more exposure to new people. It is okay to share more than once. This is especially true in the Twitter and Facebook streams, which are far more real-time than in a blog or elsewhere. If you share a link to your latest content in the morning, it's okay to share it again at the end of the day. Clearly, don't annoy your followers. Common sense should prevail. Move beyond words. Photos and videos break up the text and instantly get attention. Add variety by including various content formats. And take on Twitter. Everything I need to know about Twitter I learned in J-School. In journalism school, I learned that news stories work best when they are simple and direct. At least in any given story's lead sentences. And simplicity and other tenets of good journalism like brevity, clarity, and immediacy is now a cornerstone of how so many businesses, brands, and individuals communicate on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social networks. Of them all, Twitter can be the most challenging. In part, there's a limit on how many characters 140 you can share in each post to Twitter. What's more, though, it's hard to know exactly how to be most effective and, well, social there. Here's how some of the mantras from my undergrad days now inform the best tweets. Make every word count. In traditional news journalism, and on Twitter, you have only so much space. On Twitter, of course, it's a mere 140 characters. As I learned in journalism school, writing short is a lot harder than it looks. It's a lot more work to choose your words wisely, to be concise, than it is to ramble on luxuriously. For example, I love how Tim Seidel communicates so much in a single tweet, page 130. Keeping a tweet really short like close to 85 to 100 characters also makes your tweet more retweet friendly, since it allows a little wiggle room for forwarding, page 130. Keep it simple. Like my journalism professor Charlie Ball's directive, to avoid $20 words. The best news reporters tell a story simply and clearly. Similarly, don't try to cram too much information into a single tweet. On Twitter, less is often more. Also, link directly to blogs or other online sources, and always link to the full story rather than trying to juice up page views by, for example, linking to the homepage. Shorten URLs through Billy or similar services. Twitter will usually condense your links, but J like Bitone rich click-through and retweet stats. For example, page 131. Abbreviations. Such shorthand might maximize your character count, but 2 makes your tweet read like a teenager's text message. Provide context. News reporters do this by plugging in some of the backstory on a given news item. On Twitter, offer context by using keywords and hashtags, when appropriate, so that readers can more easily gel the gist of a conversation, thread, or logic. Like this, page 131. Lead with the good stuff. In journalism, the inverted pyramid style places the most important information at the top of any story, and then the ensuing narrative explains and expands on it. In other words, the first paragraph should contain enough information to give the reader a solid overview of the entire story. Approach sharing links or information on Twitter similarly, giving the strongest and most compelling bit in the tweet and then linking to the rest of the story elsewhere. For example, page 132. Ryle killer headlines. Headlines sell a news story or a blog post much like a great tweet invites a reader to click. Tweets that are short, punchy, and compelling are so either because they tell the reader precisely what you are tearing how to, or 27 ways, or because they are clever or funny. I like how John Hayden tweets a punchy headline and then adds his take on why it's a good read, page 133. Graphics expand on the story. A good image or graphic complements a news story. Similarly, linking to a picture via Twitter tells a story with far more impact. For example, page 133. People make things interesting. News reporters often focus on how people are affected by a given situation or event. On Twitter, similarly, It's the people who keep it interesting. That means talking to boring folks liberally, as well as adopting a conversational tone and community spirit. For example, page 133. Consider the reader. Journalists spend a lot of time coming up with the right angle for a story. On Twitter, be similarly thoughtful in your approach. The immediacy of Twitter might tempt you to dash off a tweet with little forethought. But if you respect your audience of followers similar to the way journalists consider their readers, you will spend more time thinking about what to tweet than you will spend actually tweeting it. Believe me, your followers will appreciate your effort. Source: a version of this article originally appeared in Mashab page 134. How to make your content go viral. Let's get this out of the way right now so that there is no confusion. VLL means your content catches fire, earning tons of views, retweets, and likes, and is shared globally in the remotest villages and biggest cities. It's huge. Epic. Sounds great, huh? How do you get yourself some of that? How can you make your content go viral? YOLL. Are some of you convinced otherwise? Although there are techniques that can enhance viral sharing, as we talked about earlier in this chapter, and you can certainly nudge, poke, and pray for it as well, the truth is that viral is a largely happy accident. The sooner you realize that you are not in control of what goes viral, the better. What you can control is the form your content takes and whether it is compelling. You've heard us say more than once, to make your content as good as possible for your audience and the rest is up to them. That mantra applies to viral content. It might happen, or it might not. But it's largely not up to you.